Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my impressions of E3 2021. And I'm glad that this kind of got tightened back up into more of a traditional E3 kind of format, because last year, granted, I understand everything that was going on, it just got spread out to so much kind of an extent that it was like really kind of crazy, and I liked it to be kind of packed more into kind of like the traditional kind of week that E3 usually has been in. Though I think that they should focus it more on actually doing it on like the weekends, because it's everybody's just been going there anyway, weekend wise. So we'll kind of have to see how that works out. So overall, this was kind of the E3 that I was expecting. As we know, everything happened with the pandemic, so last year's E3, everything was pretty much set to be coming out, so we knew that not a lot of stuff was going to be delayed. It was either coming out or it kind of wasn't. It would be like 2020 or 2021 kind of pushed out. Here, we kind of had the same kind of effect of like, we don't really have a lot announced, and that everything's more going to be pushed into 2022. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just going to be like, we have to deal with the ramifications of what happened with the pandemic. So that's why I can kind of understand why there really wasn't much shown this E3, and more just like, okay, these are the ones that are ready to be out now and will be in the coming months, but that's kind of just it. Though there were some pretty good surprises and really interesting kind of things that we're kind of looking forward to. Now, I know that like some companies have decided to do their own kind of briefing, because we mainly just had Xbox doing their own thing and Nintendo doing their own thing and Sony just being like, whatever. And it's like, okay, because a lot of the stuff that we've seen from the other companies probably would have been in either Microsoft's or Sony's, and they just did their own kind of thing. Gearbox, I'm kind of like, alright for. We got that there's going to be a spin-off with like a Tiny Tina kind of thing going on. I'm like, alright, do that. Square Enix did their thing and revealed the Guardians of the Galaxy game, which looks very interesting because it's single player. There's no like microtransactions. It's its own kind of story thing, different from what we saw with Marvel's The Avengers game that they did. So I might look into that. That's kind of interesting. The other kind of like Final Fantasy spin-off thing with like the dude wanting to like kill Chaos, I'm just like, what the fuck? Now, granted, the gameplay of the action style looked good, but like the trailer, it just, it is so fucking edgy. I think even like an edgy teen would be like cringing at it. Like the definition of like some edgy motherfucker, no matter like the age spectrum, would just be like, that's cringy even for me. Ugh. It's like, what the fuck, man? Just the trailer just is like, you just had this dude wanting to kill Chaos and literally just repeating the shit like that. It's like, I think he just wants to kill Chaos, guys. Now, granted, I am not against a simple story, but if we get into the territory of Game of Thrones and all this motherfucker is saying is McQueen, like Jon Snow, that's gonna be a problem. Ugh. Let's see. Then, that's pretty much the big kind of main ones that I kind of like followed. Then I got into Xbox's E3 showcase, and I really enjoyed it. Was everything for me? No. But it showed a very diverse kind of lineup of games, and like 27 out of the 30 games that were announced were also coming to Game Pass. Alright? They are definitely showing that the subscription model of Game Pass is definitely where it wants to be at. Hell, they even revealed that Hades, that had been, you can play on like the Switch and all that, will be coming to Game Pass soon. And I'm like, hey, I wanted to try that game. And I'm like, yes. Alright. So, that conference started off pretty big, revealing Starfield is going to be exclusive to Xbox and PC, and will be coming out on November 11th in 2022. I'm like, alright. And it's evidently like Space Indiana Jones and stuff like that. What we've heard about, I'm like, alright, I didn't see any gameplay, but I am intrigued with the concept, and I've had fun with Bethesda games. Not as much on Fallout 4, but I'm willing to look into see this kind of new franchise that they've got. Granted, I do want to see more gameplay. Please. That's my biggest issue. I like getting hyped for games, but for the love of God, if you're gonna show a game, show the gameplay. I don't care if it's a man with a stick poking a rock. I need to see that happening and somebody controlling it to understand how I'm able to, do something in the game. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't also kind of give me some stuff on the story, but, just showing cinematics, what? Now, granted, I know this is, giving us more of an understanding of what the game is, when it's coming out, and then they're probably going to do their own kind of gameplay thing further on. Let's see. They did a lot of stuff with this Stalker 2 one. Was alright, they kind of lingered on that for a while. They were doing stuff that was all different kind of stuff, like a flight simulator. Forza Horizon 5 got a good show. Not that much into racing games, but it looks like a nice game that for those kind of people, and that's what I like. They showed a lot of diversity with a lot of different kind of stuff going on, and Xbox sorely needs that, because if I tried to talk to somebody that's not an Xbox fan, they'd probably say Xbox only has Halo, Gears of War, and maybe Forza. They're not fucking wrong, because those are the main big ones that Microsoft was pretty much able to put out that people were being like, yeah, I want to play those kind of things. And even then, they're like, the fuck is going on with this shit? Now, granted, Gears has fared better, and Halo has not completely, crashed itself into a ditch of death, but it needs to, rectify some stuff, which I'm glad we saw Halo Infinite stuff going on here. Why is that? Because it gave a lot better impression of what's going on. It looks like a game that utilizes the Series X pretty well so far, so seeing the cinematics with the Chief and dealing with that kind of stuff worked out very well, and kind of mucking around and doing his own thing. Okay, cool. We got a little bit more of a story beat of there was an AI sent specifically to help him take out Cortana or whatnot, and that things are kind of going kind of nutty, so this is going to be Chief's new AI companion. I'm like, alright, we're dealing with these story beats and motivations. I'm like, yes, I'm intrigued to see this kind of stuff going down, because I didn't hate Halo 5 story, but it got kind of weird and went a little bit just out there, specifically because it's marketed one way, and then you're like, okay, are we still following the Chief or not? You don't really play that much as the Chief. If you're going to do a story that involves the Master Chief as pretty much the main character, commit to that. If you're going to then do a Halo game that is committed to another character being the main focus, commit fully to that. That doesn't mean you can't do cameos and shit, but don't try and ride two horses with one ass. You're going to get fucked. While also doing that, we also got an intriguing look into Halo Infinite's multiplayer and some information on that. Now, granted, they also showed this as a more extended multiplayer look in their own kind of little Vidoc kind of thing. It looks like classic Halo. Now, granted, with differences with grappling shit, how power-ups work, and how equipment works, but it looks like a return back to Halo 3 kind of days. Because I understand that whenever I was playing Halo, it doesn't have to be the exact same thing as Halo 3 and Halo 2. But when you got into Reach, you see that they're trying to muck with all these different kind of systems that they put into place, and then you're like, what's going on here? And then you see it in 4 and 5, and it just didn't hold my attention. It's like, okay, I kind of just want to play around and have fun. And this looks like it's going to be playing around and having fun with those kind of graphics and everything. And we got the information that the multiplayer is free to play. That's a big kind of thing. And then also, with battle passes, you can buy it and then go through the battle pass. But if you come in at another thing, it doesn't expire. You could buy a previous battle pass and go through that and do all that kind of shit. It's I kind of like that take on battle passes. I'm like, interesting. Because you could buy a battle pass, and if you don't get through it all the way, you could get screwed in that time frame. I like that, no FOMO, fear of missing out kind of thing with that. So I'm like, yes, Halo, 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 Halo. So that excited me a lot when I was seeing stuff going on with Halo. Back for Blood is another kind of one that really grabbed my attention because it's made by the people that did Left 4 Dead, and we're back at zombies and everything, and it just looks. We didn't get as much kind of like gameplay footage as I would like, but as we've seen from the stories and some of the kind of gameplay stuff that they are revealing, it looks like they are doing their own kind of spin, their own kind of evolution on it, but it still has that core Left 4 Dead gameplay, and people are still playing that. Now, granted, I haven't gotten the urge to play it in a while, but seeing in that, I'm like, yeah, the Left 4 Dead series was a great way to just play around and fuck around with friends. It just had that great appeal of just being like, okay, 4-player survivors going through fighting AI. That worked out pretty well. This one, and then of course you also had fighting human zombies as well. You know, all right, cool, yeah, all right. The last one that we saw that really interested me was Redfall, and this, I liked the trailer because it's a kind of interesting kind of style for. Okay, 4 survivors fighting like vampire and kind of crazy shit. And I didn't know what it looked like at first. I understand that it's an open world kind of RPG kind of effect because it's made by the same people that did Dishonored and Prey. I'm like, okay, I like Dishonored. I still need to check out Prey because that's on Game Pass and I will get to it eventually. But I kind of want to see what's going on with this because this gave me Left 4 Dead vibes, ironically enough. And that would be a great way for it to kind of work out. But we'll kind of see. It's like, okay, vampires done in an interesting kind of way. Interesting kind of different kind of weaponry, powers, and shit going on. Because even the heroes have kind of time-stopping powers, telekinetic, and kind of weird, crazy powers. I'm like, alright, I need gameplay of it, but you're on my radar. Okay. And these are mainly kind of ones coming in 2022. Halo Infinite coming holiday 2021. So the thing is, I'm patient for that one, and I'm like, I've got my tempered hype for it. I'm like, I'm loving what they're doing with it, and I feel a lot better with it than we were last summer. Just give me that release date, give me some more of that stuff. Let's kind of see how it works and plays out, and we'll be good. So I was really happy with Microsoft Conference because I got a good smattering of games that I'm like, okay, really looking forward to that. Going to have to see how this works out, and seeing that they're building up their library. Granted, they've gotten a lot of studios to pretty much put this out, and I understand people's fear of like making monopolies and shit with this, and I have those same fears. I don't want monopolies. All right, but the thing is, this is Microsoft's only available kind of like option to get their stable of games and exclusives back up, i.e. buy a studio, hopefully take care of them enough to put out franchises that they've got, because Sunset Overdrive was decent, and if they put more into it, probably could have had an interesting franchise on it. That looks like it's jumping to PlayStation because of Sony's acquisition of Insomnia. Rise, Son of Rome, not the best kind of start off to a franchise, but not the worst, so that could have kind of worked out. Quantum Break was definitely an experiment, and mainly because of a game and TV show and everything going on, and I think it just ballooned too much, and that's why they didn't really kind of go for it, but it definitely had kind of franchise potential for everything kind of going on. It's just weird. Hopefully Microsoft's like, yeah, we kind of have this stuff, so we better work with these people to do these things. Let's see. We also then had like fucking Capcom's shit show of a showcase, which mainly focused on Phoenix Wright, Monster Hunter, and a pretty much congratulatory thing for Resident Evil Village. I don't know why they even had an E3 showcase because they didn't really have a lot of games. I don't know why they didn't just pretty much pack their shit into Nintendo's because it was already kind of in Nintendo's. And that's another thing. I would say that Microsoft, since I get older, I'm almost like the fans are mainly the ones that need to be the winners, but with these showcases, Microsoft and Xbox One was a much needed one that showcased that they understand that they need to grow their stable games, and we got proof of that. And I'm like, yes, that's good, good on there. And then we saw Nintendo's, which pretty much did the same thing. Nintendo's great onto doing what they need to do and have their kind of not strange, but their own kind of stable games, doing their own kind of things. So I would almost say that I would lean towards Microsoft winning, but there really isn't anything. They were pretty much equal in what they showed of like, oh yeah, cool, because guess what? I saw some shit at Nintendo's that I'm like, yes. Now, granted, that was mainly like one game, and then I found out that like one of the other ones that was showcased is going multi-platform. I'm like, well, damn it, that's interesting. So that kind of helped out. But I'm like, Microsoft did what it needed to do, so I'm like, yes, thank you for doing what you needed to and not repeating what was going on in like 2014. Nintendo did what they needed. Now, granted, my mom likes Animal Crossing. She wanted to know more information on Animal Crossing. I pretty much watched it to see if there was anything on there, and I was like, nope, not really much there. And not much Legends of Zelda either, even though this is like the 35th anniversary. It's like, you kind of needed a little bit more. Granted, pandemic fucks everything up. So it's not that much of a like, it's not like Nintendo, it's more like, I get it. Three ones that caught my eye on this were Metroid Dread. Okay. I'm a Metroid fan. Granted, I really didn't get into the Metroid Prime series. I know. It wasn't any kind of hate or anything. It's just other kind of games or other kind of systems usually kind of occupied my time on that. That's why I didn't really get that much into it. So what I mainly more got into was the 2D Metroids. Seeing Metroid Dread and actually seeing pretty much a little bit of gameplay from it of being 2D perspective and just like being classic Metroid 5 pretty much, and having Samus pretty much stalked by this like robot motherfucker. I'm like, yes please. And then it's coming out in October, and I'm like, fuck yeah, fuck yeah, fuck yeah. That actually took the show for me, because I'm like, you're like, all right. You're like, what? You like Xbox? I'm like, I'm good with like all the consoles and games. I'm more partial to Xbox. But if you get me a good Metroid game, I loved Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy. And then I've played like Zero Mission, I've played Samus Returns, I've played like Castlevania games. I like Metroidvania games. And just seeing this, I'm like, alright, cool, woo! And I'm like, alright, new Metroid one, out this year? Fuck yeah, fuck yeah. I mean, granted, I need some more information, so I'm not completely on the hype train. I'm just like, yay! A Metroid game that I asked for like every year. I'm just like, Metroid? Metroid! I was like, yeah. And it's just kind of cool to see it and see it continue the story, because I know that there's different... Nintendo likes to do this a lot with having different kind of like timelines with certain kind of things going on. So this is continuing mainly the main story, why it's called like Metroid 5 in the presentation part that they did. And I'm just like, alright, I'm interested to see more gameplay of this, see this, how this kind of, how people like it, and then eventually get that at some point, because I like the Metroid franchise. I like seeing Samus deal with all these different kind of stuff, going through all these different kind of power-ups, and see what kind of different bosses that they're going to introduce. Let's see. They showed Shin Megami Tensei 5, and granted, I'm glad that popped out, and I like to kind of see the kind of strange stuff that they were going on for, even though I found out that I'm not really that much in the Shin Megami Tensei universe. I'm more into the Persona universe. Granted, I know there's spin-offs and there's hoobalooba-jooba-joob going on and that kind of shit, but it's like, I tried to play one Shin Megami Tensei game, and I'm just like, I'm not digging this, the music's kind of making me down, and I'm not having fun. So I'm like, eh. Whereas Persona, I'm like, yeah, I'm good with this, yeah. That's kind of more my style. But I'm glad that the Shin Megami Tensei fans get that, and they actually got gameplay going on to showcase what's going on with it. Now, again, that's coming out this year, and they showed kind of the bare minimum of what's going on. Basic kind of combat, how you kind of like acquire your demons and stuff like that. Fusion's pretty much what most people would be pretty familiar with if they're into that series and Persona. So I'm like, okay, cool. Then most other kind of games, and I'm like, all right, cool. Didn't really pull into me. They showed they're porting over a Fatal Frame game, which I've talked with some people about. I'm like, all right, that'd be cool to get into that series. And this is like the newest kind of one that they're porting over, and this is the one that's going multiplayer as well. So I'm like, hey, I can play that on Xbox. All right, so I have to kind of like see how that kind of works out. So I didn't see a lot of games that kind of pulled my interest, but I saw enough games and enough on the horizon to be like, okay, there's some kind of cool stuff going on. I kind of noticed that as you get older, you kind of like hone in on certain games that kind of pique your interest and everything. Like, thing is, Call of Duty got annualized to such a point that I'm just like, I'm kind of cool with that. And if you're not into the multiplayer, you're just like, eh. So my kind of shooters are mainly in the Halo and the Gears, where you're trying to get into the different kind of lore and the different kind of stories for the campaign, and then sometimes pop in the multiplayer and kind of rack around. Whereas when I was younger, I'd be like, hey, I like to play the multiplayer to like kind of play with my friends and everything. Now, granted, they have shifted how multiplayer kind of like work as the years have gone on, that it just kind of made it kind of bear to fucking even try and do anymore. So you kind of have to work with me. Like, I'm like, I don't want to get too much into a crazy ass fucking weird thing going on. It's like, but if you're into those kind of multiplayers, no skin, you're good. So that's, and then just seeing all the different kind of stuff. I usually hone in on like good the shooters that like draw my interest. Usually more kind of story elements for me, RPGs and just all different kinds of stuff. With the like Samus and everything like that, with like 2D side scrollers and all that kind of stuff. So I might even have to look into more of the indie stuff as well. And then of course Xbox had a lot of stuff on Game Pass that when I get more back to gaming on my Xbox, I'll have to look into at some point, because they did a lot of kind of cool stuff with having more of those on there. Like, I played Streets of Rage 4 and vastly enjoyed that one, because it was a nice old school kind of beat 'em up brawler side scroller, and I'm just like, they fucking got this game. And the thing is, I hadn't played any of those Streets of Rage, and I'm like, all right, do that kind of shit. And if we find more of those kind of games on Game Pass, I'm like, yeah, do that. That's the advantage of Game Pass, where you can try all these different kind of games to see if they like work out for you, and if they don't, you got a little bit of everything for yourself. So that way, if you're like, oh, okay, we'll see if some RPGs come in, we'll see if some shooters, some puzzlers, action adventure platformers, we'll see. So those are kind of my impressions on E3 2021. I knew this was going to be kind of like probably a down year, because, well, the pandemic and also the launch of the new gen consoles. This always happens where you get kind of a drought, where you get maybe the kind of dregs of the like ones that showcase the last gen hardware the best, versus the kind of new ones that are trying to fit themselves in with the new hardware. You always kind of have those kind of like trough years where you don't really get that many like bangers before you start getting in the middle of a console cycle, and you're like firing on all cylinders before you get those kind of ones at the end that kind of like smash it out and reach those certain kind of things, and you're like, all right, let's work this. So those are my impressions. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you had any kind of like other kind of things that you found out, or any kind of other games that I missed or didn't really invest that much looking into, tell me in the comments below. And I hope you have a good day.